Hey, hi, Seahawk fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstead, sitting down, as always, with Mr. Keith Myers. And we've got our special guest in today, Mr. Dan Viens of the the Seahawks Forever podcast, and a bunch of other stuff. And so first off, let's start there. Dan, why don't you get us all up to date since the last time you came in, which has been about 4 months. At the beginning of the season, when we all thought maybe this was a twinkle in the eye possibility. And here we are. You predicted, I think, 13 wins. I predicted 12. Keith predicted 11 on the season. And it turns out we were all wrong.
Now, to be fair, right, my win total prediction kind of evolved throughout the year. My official one, when the schedule came out, was 11-6. And then I think like week 6 or 7, when I could kind of see what this team was and got a feel for them, I bumped it to 12 wins. And then I allowed myself to dream on 13 because a colleague of mine, Bryce Coots, who I do a lot of stuff with, was on, he called it 13-4 Island. And so I joined him there for a minute. But I think the story of this year is that, and I'm still feeling it. Here we are 48 hours away, almost exactly from kickoff to the Super Bowl. And I still haven't quite wrapped my head around the fact that the Seahawks are playing for their second Lombardi trophy. And I think the reason is it just came so much sooner than we expected. This is a year ahead of schedule for me. I thought this is where we'd be next year. I really did. And I look back on the last experiences, 2005, you could see it coming through the year. You just knew that team, especially on offense, was one of the most dominant teams in the conference. And then 2013, we knew when they walked off the field against Atlanta in the divisional round the year before that this team was on to something and that they were going to be special moving forward. So 2013 felt comfortable. And so obviously 14 did too. And so this year I'm still just like, I'm watching the media coverage and everything. I'm seeing the guys being interviewed and McDonald down there in San Jose and everything. And it's surreal, man.
Yeah, I think you're right about
Keith,
this being a year ahead of
started
schedule.
out.
This whole thing about you being there being a year ahead of schedule is the thing here, is that we've got we knew this defense was going to be good, but we also knew the offense was in transition and that there were a lot of ifs and a lot of parts that needed to click together, and you weren't going to get all of them to click together all at once in order for the offense to be ready for prime time. But yet here we are. This team as a whole, top to bottom, ended up being very good. Not just the defense, but the offense as well. And it's been getting better as the season goes on, and the running game is getting more cohesive and better. And there's a reason why they're almost a touchdown favorite in the Super Bowl. This is a very good football team.
Yeah, and you touched on it with the offense. I mean, that's one thing that I think it was 6 new starters from a year ago, including the quarterback, including a change at wide receiver 1, including your offensive coordinator and his entire staff, except for one guy. And so it just made sense to kind of bake in a learning curve to your projections. Never in a million years would I have thought 14 wins and being a dominant team at the end of the year and favored to win the Super Bowl. But I'll take it, because when you look at the way this team is set up moving forward, like this could be the start of several of these appearances. Now, I don't take that lightly, and you have to cash in when you get these opportunities, especially now. People want to raid your coaching staff. They want to take your players, everything else. So nothing is given in this. Dan Campbell said it best, right? We don't know if we'll ever get back here again. So you have to seize these opportunities, but man, the future looks bright too.
The last time we had these sorts of conversations, Dan, and I know you remember, was 2013. We got to that Super Bowl, we won it, and immediately started talking about building a dynasty and that opportunity. And in fact, we did go back to the next one. Obviously, things didn't work out long-term after that, but you're hearing the same sort of talk about this team, and rightly so. I was listening on Brock and Salt at the beginning of the season, and Daniel Jeremiah came on the show, and they essentially asked him, what is it going to take for this team to break through and make the playoffs in Mike McDonald's second year? Expectations were low, especially with the national pundits, but Daniel Jeremiah was a little different. I think rose above that, kind of looked into the roster a little bit more with a careful eye like we did. And he said, you know what it's going to take? It's going to take guys that have been role players, guys like Abe Lucas and AJ Barner and Jackson Smith and Jigba. And, he mentioned a whole bunch of other guys. Those guys are going to have to step up and not just be good players, but those are going to have to be great players. And you're going to have a number of them, both on offense and defense. And that's exactly what happened this year. I think that was the key. Mike Macdonald developed this roster into something unique and special up and beyond what he had done in his first year. Now, he had great success in his first year. I think everybody was happy, but this is a completely different level, a completely different team. What do you think, Dan, is if you can kind of narrow it down to one or two kind of basic main themes that this team had, the 2024 version did not?
I think even, than the 2024 version, I think the veteran leadership that they brought in this offseason really put them over the top. I think those signings of Cooper Kupp and DeMarcus Lawrence, right? Both signings were widely criticized at the time. 3-year, $45 million sort of matching deals, right? They're both 32 years old. Their best days are behind them, or at least we thought. In the case of DeMarcus Lawrence, I'm not so sure that he's not playing his best football. At times, he's been the best player on the field for the Seahawks on defense. But that leadership, because it's such a young roster, third youngest roster in the league, and that includes those two guys, right? And so I think that was something that they lacked in 2024, is just that kind of veteran leadership to take them over the top. But the other thing is, look, how long have we been complaining about our play callers in Seattle and offensive coordinators, and we've kind of churned through them of late. And it was the big concern when you hire a defensive head coach, is like, hey, can we find a good one? And then if we do, are we going to get poached? And here we are, and we are facing that. And McDonald's going to have to hire his third offensive coordinator in 3 years. But I think those two things, that little bit of veteran leadership and then the play caller, and, maybe I'm cheating here by naming everything, but you can't talk about the dramatic improvement in this team. You can't talk about 14-3. You can't talk about Super Bowl without talking about the fact that they finally fixed this offensive line after 10 years of basically on an annual basis being among the worst, if not the worst group in the league. And man, you can see what a difference it makes. That the things that we visualized for the last couple of years that it could look like if we just got competent offensive line play. Well, this is what it looks like. Offensive player of the year, Sam Darnold throwing for a ton of yards and looking like a franchise quarterback. Ken Walker, 1,000 yards, the run pass balance. All of that is those guys up front are getting it done.
Yeah, I think, when you take a look at the Seahawks this year, they're 11-0 when they score first this season. And a big part of that, and one of the things you didn't mention that I thought I would throw out to Keith, is Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, I think we continue to overlook him, and maybe we're just kind of a little leery still, even as we approach this Super Bowl. But he's got a super oversized role to play in whether this team is successful in grabbing this thing or not. Is that fair to put on his shoulders, or is that
no
kind of the way it goes in the NFL for a elite quarterback?
I think it's fair. I think the reason I didn't mention him is because maybe I'm taking him for granted already. Like I'm so far beyond the point of he needs to prove anything to me that it's just kind of a given now that we have a really, really good quarterback, I believe, and almost every single number out there that you could try to find either for or against he's a top 10 quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I really do.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, he's a top 10 quarterback, and he, the one thing that he didn't do well this year was protect the football. He had a lot of fumbles, which is weird. We haven't really had a fumble-heavy quarterback since Dave Craig, but when he wasn't turning the ball over, he was very good. And I think because of the turnovers, people overlooked just how much of an improvement he was over Geno Smith. And, Bill and I were not Geno Smith haters on this. Like
neither was I.
he was never the problem. He also wasn't the answer. But letting him go and bringing in Sam Darnold, it's a different kind of player. And he was steadier. He was more consistent. He was more efficient. And did he turn it over? Yeah, but so did Geno. So we didn't really lose anything with that. But I really think that you have to consider from 24 to 25, the upgrade from Geno to Sam Darnold is a big one. Part of that is the offensive line. A lot of that is the offensive play caller, which are the two things that you mentioned. Because without those things, I don't think that he looked as good as he did this year. But overall, like, his presence mattered, not in a negative way. It mattered in a very positive way, and that has to be considered whenever you're looking at, like, comparing these teams.
Yeah, and I'll say two more things about Sam. One is the fact he's 28 years old was a huge part of this equation. Even if Geno had come back, and I believe Clint Kubiak when he said when he was first hired, when Geno Smith was still a Seahawk, that he was looking forward to working with him and thought he'd be a good fit for his offense. But I don't think he would have been this good. And so you give credit to Kubiak, sure, but I think it was Mike McDonald's vision to do the research that he did and to understand that this scheme, and I think we're going to see this continue no matter who the next play caller is. I think we're going to stick with this scheme. It just suits Sam so well, the under center, the play action, the boots. And I think, a lot of times when we see these young quarterbacks fail, they go to a bad organization. There's a reason these teams are drafting at the top. But a lot of times it's just scheme and system fit or misfit also. And the fact he's only 28 years old, like, no matter how well Geno would have played if he had stayed here, every year we would have been looking at quarterbacks in the draft. We would have been thinking about what's next, right? When is it Jalen Milroe's turn, presuming that he still would have been drafted even if Geno had still been here. And we just don't have to worry about that. I was just down at the Senior Bowl last week, and I barely watched the quarterbacks. Now, part of that is because this year's class stinks, especially the class that showed up in Mobile, but also we just don't need one. And that's a really refreshing thing as a fan and as someone who, analyzes the team.
So let's stick with the offense. In speaking with Dan Viens of the Seahawks Forever podcast, let's talk Seahawks offense versus this Patriots defense. Let's kind of get into the nuts and bolts of what we can expect, what we have seen with the Patriots as you've kind of taken a look at them in the last couple of weeks. Both Keith and Dan on this one. So we kind of enter this game with a 9-game winning streak. We're the 10th ranked offense by DVOA, 2.34 points per drive. Sam Darnold is third in EPA per pass when he's kept clean. He's 29th when he's pressured. New England generates a pass rush at the 9th highest rate. And we can kind of go into some details on the Patriots defense, and we can talk about their strength of schedule and all that kind of stuff. It all plays into this thing. Dan, I'll start with you. How does this play out in your mind with the discrepancy that we've seen with the record that New England's came in with, 14-3 in the regular season, but also the strength of schedule being one of the weakest we've seen in the history of charting this sort of thing? And the Seahawks are really coming in kind of battle tested.
Yeah.
What do you expect to see on the offense, just as kind of a general opening conversation?
Sure. I'm kind of perplexed by the perception of this New England defense. And maybe it's the strength of schedule thing, and people just don't give it the weight that it deserves. Or maybe it's that they've limited points in the playoffs. But I think when you start to break that down, you look at the teams they played, right? The Chargers with Kamani Vidal at running back and a broken down offensive line, Justin Herbert running for his life. A Houston Texans offense that still was kind of dysfunctional, and their lead back was Woody Marks, and CJ Stroud just did not play very well down the stretch this year. And then that Broncos team with, in a snowstorm. And you look back, I had somebody tell me right before we came on the air here that he's really worried about the Patriots pass rush because they're lethal. And I thought, wait a minute. And I just checked a couple things real quick. And it's like, wait, I jotted them down here. They're 16th in PFF grade pass rush. They're 21st in the league in sacks, and they're 19th in next gen stats pass rush win rate. They don't get after the quarterback well. Their edges aren't dynamic, and they're kind of small, actually. And then the run defense thing, which is what a lot of people have been hanging on to this week, that they're supposed to be this elite run defense. Again, maybe in the playoffs they have been. And I found it interesting. Warren Sharp the other day tweeted out that they're the best run defense in the NFL. And again, let me go back to the drawing board. And in the playoffs, they're giving up 80 yards per game. But all those things I just mentioned about the individual circumstances with those teams and what might play into that. And then you even look back at the regular season, weak strength of schedule, a lot of blowouts, teams having to throw the ball for one thing. And then you look at their last 5 or 6 games down the stretch of the regular season, and they gave up almost 140 yards rushing per game down the stretch, right? When they're trying to get seeding, when they're trying to get into the playoffs, that would have placed them 30th in the league if you extrapolate that over the course of an entire season. So I'm not saying they're not a good defense. Like, they've been pretty good at limiting points, but again, who have they been limiting them to? I don't think they have any dynamic pass rushers. And yes, Milton Williams is an elite player, but we've played elite tackles this year and handled them. Jeffrey Simmons, Vita Vea, right? We've eliminated those players. And that was, I think, the team that is going to play Sunday is better than the teams that played Tampa and Tennessee. So I'm trying to not be overconfident, because I do respect that coaching staff a ton. I respect Drake May, ton of talent, and they've done a remarkable job turning that franchise around in 1 year. They nailed the draft. They nailed free agency. They did everything that you need to do, kind of like the Seahawks did, to turn things around in 1 year. I just think when you look at the just talent, position group by position group, and who they've played, it's really, really hard for me to not see a good, balanced, successful offensive game plan on Sunday.
One of the things that I look at when I look at all of this is by DVOA, which counts for strength of schedule. New England's defense is 23rd.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now.
It's like right there at the, it's a bottom third, but right at the top of the bottom third. But it's a below average defense.
Below Carolina, Arizona, Buffalo, Tampa, Baltimore with all the injuries they had this year. Yeah, they're 10 spots below the Raiders.
Yeah. And you look at, I said in our last show that I think that New England are the Chicago Bears of the AFC. They're young, super talented on offense, but very, very young. And they don't have the defense necessary to compete in the NFC for like a Super Bowl appearance. If New England's in the NFC, I don't think they're here. I don't think they made it that far.
No,
are they better than the Rams? I don't think they are.
Yeah.
Defensively, they're not even close, and offensively,
they've only played 3 games against teams with a winning record.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you guys have seen that meme, right? That's made it around Twitter, where it's all 18 weeks, it's all 17 games, and it's like fired head coach, fired head coach, fired head coach, NFC South, bad quarterback, fired. It's just a list of bad teams and bad quarterbacks. And look, I said this on a show earlier this week that I think maybe that's what they needed, because they were so young and there is a little bit of a talent deficit there. And it was the first year of the new coaching staff. And so maybe they kind of needed a soft landing. And it doesn't mean that they can't win Sunday. It doesn't mean they can't beat anybody. I believe that to be true. And I have a ton of respect. What they did going into Denver, especially in those conditions, was pretty remarkable to beat that Denver team. But it just seems like I just see a comfortable win on Sunday, because the talent discrepancy is significant and they're hot, right? If there's 2 things you don't want to face in the playoffs of the Super Bowl, it's a really good team, which I don't know. Historically, I think usually it's good teams that make it to the Super Bowl, but it's a hot team too. And I think you can make the argument near the end of the year that the 2 hottest teams in the league were New England and Seattle, but Seattle coming out of the much better conference and having to go through that gauntlet of the best division in football and beat both those teams, the Rams and 49ers, twice in the last 5-6 weeks. Like, that doesn't even compare to what New England had to go through to get there.
So let's
Yeah.
talk about, and sticking with the offense, let's talk about early down success for the Seahawks as being one of the keys in this game. And obviously that kind of helps play into play action, and shorter down and distance on third down, I think is going to be vital for this team to kind of continue to have opportunities for explosive plays, both in the run game and in the pass game. But talk to me a little bit about what you think Kubiak is going to be looking to do against this Patriots defense on early downs, and can they find success consistently doing that? Dan?
Yeah, you're on to something, because I think the numbers, I'm not going to get them exactly right, but the Seahawks are among the worst teams in the league at 3rd and 7 plus, and the Patriots are one of the best teams in the league, if not the best, at defending 3rd and 7 plus. So let's stay out of those for one thing. But I think the way you do that, last week I went back and watched the Ravens game and the Bills game for the Pats. I think it was weeks 15 and 16. Wanted to see the Ravens game because, Orr was still running a semblance of a Mike McDonald defensive scheme there. Although as soon as we turned on the tape, you could see that he doesn't run it the same way Mike does. It's a lot of cover 3. He doesn't do the too high shell that Mike McDonald prefers. But what I got a sense of is you can run outside on this team. Like defending wide zone, they're not great. Buffalo was just pounded wide zone at him and ran for over 130 yards. And James Cook was just getting 4 to 5 yards a pop every time running outside. Has been the strength of the Seahawks team since they kind of discovered and got that running game dialed in with Kenneth Walker in the last 4 weeks or so. The other thing is they're really vulnerable in the middle of the field. I think they're 30th in the league defending middle of the field. And part of that is you look at their inside linebackers, and those guys really struggle to cover, especially if Jelani Tavai is on the field. Like he's really struggles. And you see number 48 on the field throw the football his way. And the Seahawks have been very good in the middle of the field. I think through the first 2/3 of the season, I think Sam might have been the best quarterback in the league at deep middle. And so I think you attack there, outside zone, attack the middle of the field, and just be aggressive. I don't think you need to come out with a cautious game plan against this team. Maybe in some sense you do, because the Super Bowl itself, it's just, early. It's just kind of weird. You got to get settled in. But I think there's going to be opportunities to attack this team because they can't rush the passer. They struggle to cover in the middle of the field. And I want to see the offense that we saw in the last 2 weeks, and not the one that we saw after week 11 in that Rams game, where it seemed like they kind of dialed back the aggressiveness a little bit. My analogy for that is it's kind of like when you have an injury, you have to let it settle down for a little bit first, just no activity, and then you build it back up slowly. And then when you know you're healthy again, you can let it rip. I think after week 11, that's kind of where our offense and Sam Darnold was. It's like they dialed everything down. They kind of tried to reset and stay away from the turnovers. And then now you see Sam really letting it rip and playing with confidence. And so I'd like to see Kubiak be aggressive early. And what has he got to lose, right? I mean, the Seahawks can't fire him.
So Keith, talk to me a little bit about the offensive line. Talk to me a little bit about the offensive line and what your expectations are, what you've seen down the stretch, as far as how they've improved, how the ground game has improved for the Seahawks, how Sam Darnold looks a little bit more comfortable now, I think, the last several weeks in the pocket, even though he's been facing a gauntlet of games, playoff teams with winning records down the stretch. Doesn't seem to have mattered. And maybe talk to me about the weakness on the offensive line. I think that becomes obvious, but how do they kind of game plan around that in this game?
Yeah, well, they're going to do the same thing they've always done, is that you play to your strengths, right? And you try and mitigate the weakness. And we know the offensive line has been this major Achilles heel for the last few years. And this year it's not. And I think that we lose track of the fact that this is a much improved unit. Not just that, they stuck Gray Zabel in there and he's been good, but Abe Lucas has been better. And Jalen Sundell has been good. And they've gotten a lot out of, left tackle. And yeah, they still have a massive problem at right guard, who is good for destroying at least one drive every game. But they've managed to work around that. They move Sam Darnold around. They do a lot of different things in order to kind of mitigate that issue. You see a lot of times a running back will sit and basically look right at Anthony Bradford and is like, okay, is he getting beat? No, then I can run my route. And they do a lot of that kind of stuff, but it's Sam Darnold is when he has time, he's great. And he has had a lot of time this season. Or yeah, he's been able to sit there in the pocket and go through his progressions and find the right guy in a way that Geno Smith never had that option. For a while, Russell Wilson didn't have that option. So just to be able to see a guy drop back and survey the field has been nice. It's been a long time since we've seen a Seahawks quarterback have the ability to do that repeatedly throughout any one game.
And you know what makes it even better is he's really good under pressure too. How many throws have we seen this year where he's getting blasted as he's releasing the football and he just puts it on a dime. I'm thinking about some of those throws he made at the end of the last regular season game against the 49ers, the one to Cup, right? And the one to JSN, just in tiny, tiny little windows with a guy in his face. The touchdown to Bobo in the NFC Championship game, he's getting hit right as he throws that, and it's a pinpoint pass. I think with the offensive line, you make some good points. And what I would say about Anthony Bradford is this: almost every team in the league has a guy out of their 5 that they kind of have to game plan around and scheme around, a weak link, right? They almost all do. And I know that what attracts so much attention to Bradford is his bad reps are so bad. And he has 4 or 5 of them a game that are like, social media viral clip worthy, where he's turning around looking at the quarterback or he's blocking his own guy. But he's gotten so much better. And there's been some key plays down the stretch this year where his block has keyed it. And I'll share something with you that Brian Baldinger told Bryce Coots, who I went down to the Senior Bowl with last week. We were waiting in line to get our credentials. I was hanging out with Albert Breer in one line, and Bryce was hanging out with Baldinger. And I think Baldinger knows a little bit about offensive line play. And Bryce asked him what they should do for next year. Should they go out in free agency and add a veteran because it's such a young group, or should they draft another guy high in the draft? And he said, you could do either of those things. Sure. None of that would surprise me because Bradford has had his struggles, but he praised Bradford, said he thought he's the best version of himself now that he has been since he's been a pro. And remember, this guy's still only 25 years old. He was drafted really, really young. And then he said something that really caught us off guard. He said, if I'm running that team, I'm bringing back the same 5 guys next year. And week 1, I'm rolling out the exact same group because he's good enough that continuity will be the best thing you can see out of this group. But to answer your question more pointedly, Bill, I think the reason this line is so much better now and that the running game finally clicked, part of it is what Mike McDonald told us during the season, right? It's one thing here, it's one thing there. It's going to take some time to get it all dialed in. I think it's Jalen Sundell and Gray Zabel kind of growing up together, right? We know the ex-teammates and roommates and all that. Zabel just got better as the year went along. And I think Sundell was better when he came back after the injury than he was before. We were all wondering while he was hurt, hey, maybe Olu keeps the job, right? Or many of us were, because the run game kind of started to pick up while he was in there, right? And so it's kind of easy to make that correlation. Sundell's been so good. I think it's his job long-term. I think it's his job to keep. They don't need to upgrade center this offseason. I think that combination, you see those guys get to the second level, it's really what's keying this running game.
So let's switch gears and let's talk Seahawks defense against this Patriots offense. Keith, why don't you start? Why don't you just kind of set up what you think this defense brings to the table that's unique and that maybe the Patriots really haven't faced yet this season or in the playoffs? What can they expect to see out of this defense right out of the gate?
Well, I mean, you look at Seattle, and a lot of it's talent. I mean, it's just the Seahawks are very good at all 3 levels, and they get after the quarterback well. They're the best run defense in the league by a lot of different measures. And so they just kind of overwhelm teams. And then you look at like some of the unique players like Nick Amore, and I know he rolled an ankle a couple days ago, and people are panicking about that. But McDonald and Amari both said he's going to play. So I'm
Did
not
you
worried
guys
about
see
that.
it? Don't mean to cut you off, but right before we went live, Mike Garafolo tweeted, Nick Emenwari today on the final practice report was a full participant. He's good to go for Sunday.
Yeah. And so he is a guy that, like, he's a unicorn. Most teams don't have a Nick Amari, and he does so many things for this defense, and they can line him up and, there's like 5 different positions where they can stick him, and teams just have a hard time accounting for him. And if you have a guy that you need to shut down, Christian McCaffrey, when it was the 49ers, go back and rewatch the tape and see how many times when McCaffrey goes out into a passing route that it's in Amari in coverage, because he's one of the few guys in the NFL that can truly cover Christian McCaffrey one-on-one. And they shut him down, right? And so he's this like Swiss Army knife of just pure talent that Mike McDonald has at his disposal that no other team has. This is not something that Drake May has seen. So I have a hard time looking at this defense and being like, oh, here's the one weakness, the one thing you can attack, because this defense does everything well.
Yeah, there's no weakness. And I think, the prevailing thought would be, young quarterback against an elite defense, he's going to struggle because he's just going to see things on Sunday that he hasn't seen before. But I think it's more than that. And again, I want to, bench this by saying I think Drake May is an incredible talent. I had him as my number 2 overall prospect in that draft. He's good before I expected him to be good. Almost 5,000 yards, 70% completions. But the guy holds onto the ball a little bit. He's over 3 seconds in time to throw. If you filter by dropbacks for guys that are full-time starters, he's like 5th worst in the league at holding onto the football. And in part because of that, 62 sacks this season, 15 in just the playoffs alone. Will Campbell, since he came back from injury, has been really rough. And I think the Seahawks are going to be able to take advantage of that. Garrett Bradbury at center. There's a reason that we didn't try to sign him in the offseason, right? Even though he'd be a scheme fit. And a bunch of fans wanted us to. You guys probably heard this too when he was released. Like, oh, let's go get Garrett Bradbury because he was a first-round pick, right? He's not a guy he doesn't have a great anchor against power, right? You can bull rush him. He has a hard time pass protection at times. There's some vulnerabilities there. Even their right tackle is a good grizzled veteran, but his lateral agility isn't what it used to be. You can get to Drake May, and even though he's a threat to run, he's not a scrambler, right? And the Seahawks will see that. Usually his runs are he climbs the pocket and he takes off up the middle. He doesn't mess around. And he's kind of like Trevor Lawrence in that way, a little bit big, tall, really athletic. And so I think the Seahawks will have a good plan for that. I think they're going to be able to get him on the ground and pressure him. The other thing about him, even though 70% completion, sometimes he does what a lot of young quarterbacks will do, and he just misses. It'll be 3rd and 5, and he'll just overthrow a guy, or he'll throw it behind him or whatever. It's just not really pinpoint accurate, and that's to be expected from a guy playing in just his 2nd year in the league and only his 2nd year being under center and all that stuff. We've had to face Matt Stafford, it seems like 100 times over the last month. And after facing Matt Stafford, and then you get to face a young guy that's going to airmail one every once in a while, and maybe he won't on Sunday, maybe he'll be great. But it's just, I think it's kind of like that analogy of training at mile high altitude and then come down to sea level and you just feel stronger. You face Matt Stafford a couple times, and it kind of makes everybody else seem a little bit easier to defend.
Well, and like I like
so
to preface all that with saying that how much you liked Drake May, because I had Drake May as he was my number 1 quarterback coming out of that draft.
I had Daniels 1, and then May and Williams.
Yeah. But yeah, I had him as my number 1 coming out, and then yeah, and I'm not surprised to see him be this good this early. I was a little surprised at how off it looked in year 1. I thought, well, maybe I missed on that evaluation, but I think some of that had to do with the coaching staff they had in place that year. But this is a really talented guy, and he's sometimes like he can do some things that other guys can't. He's big. He is like almost Josh Allen big. He's this, big, strong guy who runs well and all of that. He's not a scrambler. And like you said, that no one's going to confuse him for like Lamar Jackson or, some of the guys that make a living with their feet. But when he wants to go somewhere, he can be hard to take down. Even with the 60-some sacks, he can be hard to get down. I think he's a very good player. Even only in the second year, he's a very good player. And I still think that having played Brock Purdy and Matthew Stafford so much over the last year, the Seahawks are battle tested against really good, smart quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be able to do some things against Drake May that you don't get away with against Matt Stafford. So
yeah, but what does concern me about him is he's so capable of the dynamic play, the explosive play, right? That even I don't think I'm going to be really comfortable in this game unless we get to a point where we have a couple of score lead, because he's one of those guys that you can feel, you can go 3 and out, and feel like you've got him solved and you've got him down. And then all of a sudden he'll hit you over the top for a 60-yarder that's just pinpoint, or he'll, like you said, Keith, he'll rip off a 20-yard run to get a key first down and flip field position. And so it's one of those things where even if, we could hold him to 55% completions and pick him off a couple of times, unless it's a really comfortable lead, like he's always capable of that spectacular throw or that big run to kind of get momentum back for their offense.
Let me add some punctuation to that conversation about the defense and kind of stick with the, inside the trenches kind of a discussion. Seattle's allows about 36% rushing success rate, which and they do that without stacking the box. Seattle's run defense DVOA is negative 30.1%, tied for the 14th best since 1978. New England ranks 24th in rushing success rate, even with their strength of schedule issues that we talked about. Seattle produces pressure on 38.1% of dropbacks, fourth highest, and that's without blitzing. Mm-hmm. Patriots allow pressure on 37.3% of dropbacks, ranking 25th, plays right into the strength of this defense. Patriots also rank 29th in pressure rate allowed versus a 4-man rush. You know where I'm kind of going with that. So if you're not excited about the defense showing up in this game, and they've been doing it all year, and there's like a handful, there's a couple of games where, and they came against the Rams and one against the Buccaneers where the defense struggled. There were some injury situations, especially in the secondary, in those games that kind of gave up a lot of yards. But, in 2 of those games, we ended up winning. And let me talk to you about the secondary a little bit, if we can focus on Seattle's secondary and how it marries up with the way that we like to work in the trenches, rushing for the unique role, and you alluded to this, Keith, of Nick Emanwari as the big nickel in this thing that kind of makes it all work. If you were to pinpoint an area of the secondary, is there any weakness, I guess is my question, Dan, that you can potentially see against the New England offense, who we, by all accounts, is tremendous. They're ranked 2nd overall in the NFL in a lot of different categories, and Drake May, obviously, a candidate MVP. And what are your thoughts around this Seahawks defense potential weaknesses?
There aren't any, but according to PFF, there are, because I don't know if you guys saw their rankings of which position groups were better for each team, but they had the Patriots corners better than the Seahawks. They had the Patriots inside linebackers is better than the Seahawks. They had their offensive line better than the Seahawks, 62 sacks. I may have mentioned that. I don't think there is a weakness in that secondary. And you touched on it. Mike McDonald kind of gave away the secret sauce a couple of weeks ago, where he said, we're basically a 4-3 team now, because Nick Emanwari, even though he's called a safety, he's kind of playing like weak side linebacker mostly. And that's why they're able to play such light boxes, because he's so big and physical. He can fill a gap all by himself. And they're so assignment sound in doing that. Their corners are I think as a group, the most physical corners I can ever remember seeing. Even the Legion of Boom, like Sherman obviously was physical. Maxwell was, but he just wasn't as dynamic athletically. And so he had, you could beat him on the back end. But, even Reek Woolen now is coming up, you guys, and hitting in the run game. And Josh Jobe, even though he's kind of an undersized guy, does it. But it's Eminwari, it's Spoon, it's Love, it's Bryant, it's Okada. And it's how violent they are within the rules. Like, have they been called for targeting or spearing all year long? I mean, maybe there's one that I'm not remembering, but they hit harder than anyone in the league, and they do it within the rules. Mm-hmm. And I think that takes its toll on you as a game goes along. It sends a message early, and it wouldn't surprise me if there's a game or a play early in this game, kind of like Cam Chancellor against Demaryius Thomas early in Super Bowl 48, right? Where he comes up and comes across the middle and blasts him and separates him from the ball. Thomas just kind of shrank the rest of the game. He didn't want any of that. I think it sends a message, and I think they're going to do that similarly. It's such a fun secondary to watch. It breaks my heart a little bit that it's probably not going to come back next year intact, but I'm sure they'll go out and find someone else that fits in really well too. So,
yeah, the one weakness that I would say,
talk to me a little bit about left tackle.
I would say the one weakness that I see in the secondary would be Reek Woolen's head.
He back so like after that stupid penalty call, which it wouldn't have upset me if McDonald. I think he would have been justified in pulling him after that. Mm-hmm. It was such a dumb penalty at such a key time, but he came back after that, made some huge plays that were really decisive in this game down the stretch. So I certainly like that ticked me off. And I'm sure you guys saw the mic'd up stuff from Mike McDonald, right? Where the official comes over to him and he's like, I know who it is. You don't have to tell me the number. Like, he was not happy. And I don't think Reek will be back next year. But we need him for Sunday.
Well, they do definitely need him for Sunday. And that's one of the things that, like, he is physically just as gifted as you'll ever find in a corner. But you go through and you look at all of his years in Seattle, and there have been these mental kind of breakdowns at times throughout it. And that was his third taunting penalty this year. So I know
it's most egregious. Like, you can see the referee saying, get out of here, and he's still doubled down on it.
Yeah. And so in previous years, that would have cost Seattle a game. To give up, it was 4th and 12. Now it's a first down, and then the very next play give up a 34-yard touchdown. That would have cost Seattle a game. Now, luckily, Seattle's got enough talent and is coached well enough that they have a margin for error where they were able to absorb that. But every time there's a situation, how much do you trust Reek Woolen not to do something stupid?
Well, and I'm glad you pointed out the Puka touchdown on the next play, because, it was after that he made some big plays down the stretch. But that was just such a genius play call by McVay, to the point that if he does something stupid in the game on Sunday like that, probably going to pull him off the field at least for the next play, because Josh McDaniels is smart enough to do that as well, and kind of go back to the well and try and pick on you there.
So I was going to talk about the New England offensive line against our defensive line guys. Left tackle Will Campbell has a 39, and we don't put a lot of weight into PFF. We've talked about it on our show a lot, but he owns a 39.8 PFF pass block grade in the postseason, when they've actually faced some teams that, have a little bit of defense to them. And of course, Jared Wilson right next to him at left guard, the rookie as well. Talk to me a little bit about what your expectations are from our guys, our rotation guys in there. Your Leonard Williams, DeMarcus Lawrence's, Nwosu, Hall, etc. Byron Murphy in the middle. What can we expect to see from our guys in this game?
I think a lot of success. I just think this is a tough matchup, and one that Josh McDaniels, he might be qualified and capable of scheming around it because he's really, really good. I don't know that he's getting quite the attention this week that he should. The spotlight seems to be shined on some other areas. But I think this offensive line, when you look at it and how it's performed, is still very much a work in progress. And I think you're going to see the Patriots offensive line next year look very, very different from this one. I think there's a good chance that Will Campbell and Jared Wilson are the only two returning starters next year. And my prediction is they'll move Wilson into center, which he played at Georgia. They'll let Bradbury walk. I don't know. Did he sign a multi-year deal or was it just a 1-year deal? I thought it was a 1-year deal. And they'll move Campbell inside to guard because like he made it work for the first half of the season. But there's a reason that there aren't many tackles in the league that succeed with 32-inch arms. And he's kind of the poster child for that. Like he's very, very talented and very technically sound in many ways. But you can't grow longer arms, and he gets beat on the edge, and he's been even worse since he came back from injury. I think he would be an elite guard. And so I think you're going to see the Patriots be pretty aggressive this offseason looking for tackles, either in the draft or free agency. I think that's a vulnerability of theirs. And I think McDonald's going to have a really good plan. I think he's going to have some stunts in place that'll be different than what we've seen. You know, they've kind of had a tendency the second half of the season to stunt to Leo Williams. And that's certainly a tendency you can see on tape. And so maybe that switch that up a little bit. But I just think it's going to be, to me, that might be the key of the game, is I think New England's going to have a real hard time pass protecting against our pass rush. And you say, well, the answer to that's quick game, right? And get the ball out quick. Well, Drake May hasn't exactly done that to this point. His success has been getting time to throw. When he does get time to throw the football, throwing the football deep. Again, that, you know, I think it's 3.1 second time to throw. That I think he's going to be under duress from kickoff to whistle.
One of the things when I look at that same thing is that you've got Nuoso, who was really big down the stretch in the regular season, just coming up with big play, pressure when they absolutely needed it. And then he's kind of disappeared in the playoffs. Well, he's disappeared in the playoffs because he's played against two really good left.
Oh, is Keith frozen?
I think he is frozen for right now anyway.
He just didn't. He couldn't bring himself to say the words Trent Williams. I think that's where he was going with that. He just didn't want to say it.
Well, I was going to say, you know, this conversation so far, and especially the last 10 minutes, I mean, Seahawk fans I've seen some reservation, like getting too excited about this game, getting too built up, getting too confident about taking on this team because, you know, they were 14-3 in the regular season. They had a lot of stats. May was throwing the ball all around the field, et cetera. Their defense has come on the last couple of weeks. You can talk about strength of schedule all you want, but all you can do as an NFL team is play the teams that are in front of you, and they've done that. Now, with this conversation, I can't help myself, Keith and Dan, from being really excited about this. And every time I add a little bit, I'm like, oh my gosh. And it's even worse, you know, than we're talking about, because there's all this EPA stats, all this DVOA stuff, advanced metrics that just point in one direction in this game. And that's heavily favoring the Seahawks at almost every turn. How do we keep grounded in this game and our expectations not exceeding at the actual performance on the field? Or is your feeling, Dan, that the performance on the field is going to match high expectations, and this Seahawks team has a real chance here to blow out a New England team, and I'm talking like double-digit type score differential here?
It's been something I've struggled with this week. Like I've tried to talk myself into being pessimistic or concerned, but I just feel like I'm having to work hard to do that. Like it's contrived, right? I just don't feel that way. I think both of these things can be true. New England's a really good team. They're nowhere near as good as the Seahawks. And I just think the Seahawks are built for this moment. the matchup favors them in almost every single head-to-head position matchup. That I just don't know where you see an advantage for New England and where you can find an advantage that's significant enough that they can ride it for 60 minutes to a win. I think and you could say this about every single game that's played during the season. I think the only way the Patriots win this game is if something weird happens.
Can you believe that you're actually saying those words out loud, given where you were in August to where you are the first part of February right now, on what will be, essentially the eve of the Super Bowl? You're saying things that you would have had to have just been on a different planet if you would have said those things in August or September about this team.
Did we lose Keith again?
No, I'm here.
Okay. Was that for him?
No, that was for you, but I'll take it.
Either one of you guys. Yeah.
No, and I think I touched on that. I'll just be brief. I think I touched on that at the beginning a little bit, but I just think there were so many changes on offense this year. I just thought there would be a little bit more of a growth curve, and that I thought this was going to look a lot like 2012, where we'd get into the playoffs, maybe we win a game or two, but we ride off into the sunset when the season's over, thinking, oh, the pieces are in place. Next year, we're going to be a preseason favorite to go to the Super Bowl, and everyone's going to be feeling good about the Seahawks. That's why I'm still, yeah. And that's where I thought we were. We're a year early.
Yeah. So I look at all of this and I go, this team is the same team that Vegas had the over under at 7.5 wins, right? They were picked by so many national pundits to finish either third or fourth in the division. A lot of them were picking, Seattle to have 6 wins in that range. Now, this team that won 14 is favored by almost a touchdown in the Super Bowl at 5.5 right now. And honestly, and you go through and you go through and you look at all the different parts, the metrics and the predictive models all point to Seattle. I saw one of the things that said that, going in, Seattle's got a 70% chance of winning. They only had a 56% chance of winning against the Rams by that same metric, right? It was, I think, 69% against the 49ers the week before that. So the predictive models and all those things, everything points towards Seattle. And yet at the beginning of the year, Vegas had them at 7.5 wins.
Right. Yeah. And you know what really kind of helped me get through that push a few days ago when I was starting to talk myself into a little cautious pessimism, is what the people are saying that play this game and coach this game, play it and analyze it at a high level. It's really hard to find people who truly believe the Patriots are going to win on Sunday. Most of the people picking them to win seem like they're doing it just to be contrarian, right? But did you see Myles Garrett on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon this week? Like Fallon couldn't even get the question out of his mouth, and Myles Garrett's like, Seahawks are going to win big. Like, the people that know football have very little doubt that the Seahawks are going to win on Sunday, and maybe convincingly. So I probably shouldn't have any doubt either.
Yeah, it does feel weird.
Let's wind up this conversation.
So confident, but what else are you going to be here? Yeah. Like, I am the natural pessimist.
True.
Of Seahawk land.
It's your brand,
and it is. But how do we look at any of the data of the stuff in front of us and not just be like, Seattle's going to win this one. They're going to win it comfortably, and I'm going to have a stress-free Sunday on the most important Sunday of the year.
Yeah,
that's how I feel going in.
It is still kind of scary to say that out loud, but when the numbers match the eye test, that's when you can maybe allow yourself to be. It's okay to be confident. I gave up long ago thinking that what happened on the field had anything to do with whether I watch a game or not. Like, I think we all go through that. I've had a lot of conversations with people about this. When I was younger, I would turn on a Mariner game and we'd be up 8-0 and we'd lose. And I'd think it was my fault, because if I hadn't turned it on, maybe the universe would be different. Those days are long gone. They're the best team, and they're the best team usually wins. And I think they're
So
the
let's
best
wind up
team
this
by a lot.
conversation. Yeah. Let's wind up this conversation. And then we'll do, I'll test the waters with a prediction at the end.
Okay.
But let's wind this conversation up, and each of you give me two players, one on defense, one on offense, on the Seahawks roster, skill players, guys that are going to affect this game. Who is going to stand out? Who's going to put themselves in a position to be offensive player of the game, defensive player, MVP? Dan, go ahead.
It's okay. I'll wait on the offense. On defense, now that I know that Nick Emenwari is okay, I just feel like he makes such splash plays that he fits the profile of a guy that would win Super Bowl MVP, right? We've seen those guys. Larry Brown gets 2 picks and otherwise doesn't do much. We saw our own guy, Malcolm Smith, get Super Bowl MVP. He wasn't the most dominant player on the field that day. He just had a couple splashy plays. You know, Emenwari's going to be in a position where he might get a sack or 2 and a turnover and a couple of tackles for loss and maybe an interception because he's all over the place. I think he's in really, really good position to win MVP. On offense, it's so easy to say Sam Darnold. And I do, if I was a betting guy, he'd probably be my betting favorite because the attention's on him going into the game. So I think if he goes, you know, similar to what he did in the NFC Championship game, if he goes over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, even if JSN gets 200 of those yards and 1 of those touchdowns, I think Sam wins MVP because the quarterbacks usually do, and he's one of the big storylines. However, I think Ken Walker's got the best chance of anyone to be MVP of this game because I think he's going to have success running the
We
football.
haven't even talked about today yet.
Yeah, I think he's going to have success running the football against him on the outside because of what I've seen with how they can give up outside zone runs. And he's going to get 25 touches. And I think he's going to have some impactful touches in the passing game. I think that's going to be part of the game plan. They're going to have some stuff dialed up. And I think he has a chance for like a 200-yard all-purpose game and a couple of touchdowns and an MVP award.
I like those picks, but I'm going to go in a completely different direction because I like DeMarcus Lawrence as a potential defensive MVP. I think he is going to just eat. You look at his season.
He is so locked in.
This whole season, he's made all these splashy plays, but he's also made the non-splashy plays. He just makes plays. He's been such a tremendous addition to this defense. And now you're going to put him in a situation where I think the Seahawks are going to have the lead. They're going to be the Patriots are going to be trying to throw their way back, and he's going to be able to just come after the quarterback. And that is what DeMarcus Lawrence does best. I think he's going to have a massive game. And then you go back and you look at some of the games. This is a guy that's really good at forcing fumbles. You force a bunch of fumbles, recover one, all that kind of stuff. You can totally get in that conversation for MVP as a defensive player. And on the offensive side of the ball, I think it's JSN. He is such a huge portion of Seattle's offense. Like, you go through and I was looking at prop bets right before we came on and just kind of going through some of the fun ones. The over under for JSN was 94.5 yards. No other player in this game on either team broke 40.
Yeah.
Everyone else was under 40 for their plus or minus. He is expected to have a massive game. He's going to be a huge part of any game plan. And if this offense does what it's going to do, it's because a large part because he does his thing. I think he's going to have a couple touchdowns. I think he's going to have at least 10 catches, probably 130 yards. And because he is the best receiver in the NFL statistically this year, and then you have a game like that in the Super Bowl, I think they lean really hard on that, and he ends up as the MVP.
I like it. What about you, Bill?
You know, I love those picks. I really do. In fact, Keith, you stole my defensive guy. And I, the more you think about it, you could go with a defensive back. You could go with Ernest Jones, maybe having a pick. Drake May struggles a little bit throwing over the middle, and this could be an opportunity for him to have impact play, maybe even a couple. I think he's going to be all over the field. I think he is going to have some impact. But really, this game is going to come down to the trenches. It usually does in a Super Bowl. And Seattle is clearly, I think, ahead in this category in this game, especially on the defensive side. And when you got guys like Byron Murphy and Leonard Williams doing the dirty work on the inside, it really does give you a great opportunity to have DeMarcus Lawrence have an impactful game on the edge. And he is so, and I said it out loud, he is so locked in, Keith. He's a player that has been desiring this moment for like 12 years. And he moved to this team specifically for this game to get to this moment. And he is going to be a dog in this game and have an effect on the game. Now, he may not have the stats. It may not turn out the way that we're talking about, but you'd mentioned forced fumbles, Keith. He's making plays like that. He's might not get that sack, but he's going to have 7 pressures in this game. Like, he is going to have a serious impact. And playing the run, forget about it. Those guys don't have a chance. Like, if they run to his side, he's going to stop. Like, he's going to sell out his body, his mind, his everyone around him. He's going to be like a force on the field. Like, I would key in on him on the defensive side. Now, on the offense, I'm going to be a contrarian here.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. So quickly, contrarian, Dan, you'd mentioned kind of the lunch pail choice of Ken Walker. Now, he doesn't strike you as a lunch pail guy, but he's going to be doing the dirty work in this game.
Yep.
Picking up the yards, hopefully on first down. He's got 5-6 yards. That would really help Sam Darnold and Kubiak really design some unique plays on second and short, third and short, to really change the dynamic and the flow of the way this game goes. But one of the things that the Patriots don't do very well at all is cover tight ends. They have allowed 97 tight end receptions in this game. And I think AJ Barner could have an opportunity in this game to have a huge impact, especially in the red zone, when all the focus is going to be on Njigba. All the focus is going to be on Rashid Shaheed. And AJ Barner can slip in there and create havoc, make some big plays. I think he could end up having 7-8 receptions in this game. Now, he might not have, over 60, 70 yards, but he had a couple of touchdowns to that, and he could end up being a sneaky MVP candidate.
I like that. If you had asked me who I want to win MVP on each side of the ball, I might have said Barner on offense and Witherspoon on defense, because I want it so badly for Witherspoon, because as great of a player as he has been and has become, he's not very productive. Like, he doesn't make plays on the ball very often. Started to see a little bit more of that at the tail end of the season, but he only has 2 career interceptions, right? He's just one of those guys that kind of wreaks havoc, but doesn't always fill up the stat sheet. It'd be cool to see him have a game where he fills up the stat sheet, right? Has 9 tackles, maybe a pick or 2 and a fumble recovery and a sack. He could have a very similar game to what I described Nick Emenwari having. And I would really like that for him. That'd be pretty cool.
Okay. So let's do some quick predictions. I know on your show, Dan, Seahawks Forever podcast, you're probably going to be doing a prediction, some of the other things you're involved with, but we haven't kind of predicted this thing yet. So I'm going to start with Keith. Keith, you've had a lot of time to think about it. We've put together a few shows around this game so far, and this is the last show that we have before the Super Bowl 60. What are your thoughts? What's your prediction?
I'm looking at this, and I am the natural cynic, and I've looked for everything that maybe I've missed. What am I overconfident about? Because I'm the Seahawks fan, and I'm seeing all these things from that lens. But I am the natural cynic, and I've looked through, and I can't find where I'm going wrong on this. I just don't see New England's offense doing a lot in this game. I also don't see New England's defense doing a lot to stop Seattle. I've got the Seahawks winning this one 31-16. I thought 16 was generous in this game, but at the same time, it's a
2 touchdowns and 2 2-point conversions. Is that was there safety in there?
It's a bunch of field goals early and a touchdown late.
Okay. I like it. My turn?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my prediction has changed. Earlier in the week, I think it was like a 10-point margin. But I was asked yesterday, and I'm similar to Keith. I'm going 34-13. Wow. And I think it might be the kind of game where, as much as I know I said earlier, I'd like to see them be aggressive early. And I said on a show last night that I'd like to see maybe McDonald send a few extra rushers at May than is his norm. I'm not so sure about that now. I think they're going to kind of play a sort of a feeling out scheme early on and just kind of play their base nickel, right? And then just kind of see how New England tries to attack them. But I think it might be a game that at halftime is within one score and the Patriots are looking pretty good and it sort of seems like it's in the balance. And then over the course of the second half, we've seen this a lot this year. We see elite level adjustments by Kubiak and McDonald during the game on both sides of the ball. And then you just see the talent wear out. And I think the Seahawks defense is going to wear down that Patriots offensive line. I think our running game is going to wear down their defense, especially their edges are really undersized. Their outside linebackers and their edge players. And I think maybe we pull away late 34-13 and we don't have to stress this one out to the last minute.
Wow. So I wrote down my prediction before you started, and I don't know if anybody can see this, but it's backwards.
34-13.
34-13. And the similar rationale, but I will say this: I do expect that the Seahawks defense is so overwhelming. I think from the beginning, I just don't think that New England ever gets it really going. They look discombobulated from the start. I think that gives us a lot of extra possessions. I think, you end up in desperate situation, I think almost before halftime with them, as far as trying to go for it on fourth down, maybe even inside their own territory, in just to keep drives going. And we, and kind of plays into what Keith was talking about as far as, or Dan, it was you who talked about Ken Walker, being a guy that could potentially, be an MVP. And I think this is the scenario where it happens is our defense comes on strong quickly. They basically play from behind. We generate additional, opportunities for our defense on 3 and outs and longer fields and maybe even some shorter fields because they go for it on fourth and we stop them. And Ken Walker gets fed the ball the entire game, ends up having, well over 100 yards, and 2 or 3 touchdowns. And this thing kind of is not competitive. And in the second half, it's just a matter of just not making mistakes and holding on. And I see him scoring at least 34. Like, this offense has been really good lately. I think it's undersold how good the Seahawks offense is and how good Sam Darnold has been down the stretch. And then the defense, I just don't think that they know what's coming. And I think Seattle has a real opportunity here to put a big stamp on the franchise and an identity for a long time to come. I mean, you talked about it at the beginning of the show, where this team is set up for success, not short term, not just for this game, but long term. They may only have 4 draft picks this draft, but they have $80 million in cap space with an additional $30 million that they can generate fairly easily without moving on from any player.
Yep.
And when you're in that sort of position and you've just won the Super Bowl, the world is your oyster, man. And you take this opportunity to create a situation for your team where you can get back 2 or 3 times in a row. And that's where we're at. So I like your score prediction, obviously, Dan.
Obviously.
And I kind of, and you too, Keith, I see the game kind of separating, 2 teams separating as they play, and one team is clearly better than the other one.
I'll say this too. If we can get this one on Sunday, it kind of feels like the universe would be back in balance. And what I mean by that is Super Bowl 49 was ours. We had it in our hands against one of the all-time, maybe the best all-time, quarterback and one of the great all-time head coaches in league history. We had that game, and that one should have been ours. That felt stolen. That Lombardi that they're displaying in their offices feels like it should be ours. If we can get this one, as I said earlier, a year ahead, like in a year when none of us really expected us to be a favorite in the Super Bowl, let alone get there, kind of feels like, okay, we steal one back, right? And I don't mean revenge in any way. I don't buy into that angle. There's nobody here from either team that was there then. There might be some coaching carryover on the New England side, Josh McDaniels, obviously. But it would just kind of feel like, okay,
John Schneider.
Now we have a clean slate, and now we can move forward. Yeah.
Yeah, John Snyder is the first GM in NFL history to take a team to the Super Bowl twice, where he's got no player and no coach
Isn't that cool?
in common between the two teams.
Did it and only had one losing season, went 7-9 once, and was able to get through all those changes and restructure the way they draft and really change philosophically how they acquire talent and do it with a new coach. That's a pretty cool stat.
And how about this? We end this season, this historic season, 14-3, couple playoff wins, now a Super Bowl, and Mike Macdonald's second season. How about hitting a home run on Mike Macdonald? I mean, yeah, we need to change out the offensive coordinator every year, but so what? We're in the Super Bowl. We go away with a win. You got Mike Macdonald as a coach. How good is that?
And the guy that I wanted first was Vrabel. It's, ironically enough, he was available. The Titans had just let him go. I thought he was kind of a turnkey, ready-made head coach. There just was never any interest. Like they never talked. Maybe it was a personality thing, and maybe Schneider just didn't think that was a fit. But yeah, to gain the insight that Schneider did by talking to some of the guys around the league really just shows, and he's been known for this for a long time. He's such a good cultivator of personal relationships that he was able to call other teams that had interviewed Macdonald and chosen to go other directions because they didn't want to wait. And he, without ever having met the man, he knew he is who he wanted to hire. To have that kind of vision, Schneider just the other day when asked about Macdonald and what he likes best about him, says he's so intentional in every thought and action he has. I would say the same about Schneider. When he's intentional, when he has conviction about a decision, whether it's for a player, Marshawn Lynch, he tried 2 years to get him. Leonard Williams, he worked on getting him for 2 years. Ernest Jones, like we may see Max Crosby end up a Seahawk yet because he's been trying to get him for a year and a half. He generally gets it done. And I think that might be his legacy, is how his first coaching hire was an absolute grand slam home run. I think Mike Macdonald's going to be around here for a very long time. I think we're going to have many Super Bowl runs. And I'll say this, Patriots are set up pretty well too. I don't think this is the last time we're going to be playing them in the Super Bowl.
So would you guys by any chance have just a little bit of time to answer some questions?
Yeah, let's go for it.
That we've got.
And I will, again, I can't put mine into your comments. But I do want to shout out Shane. He popped into my comments with a super chat. Good to see you, Shane. He's from down under in Australia. He's probably a little disappointed because Rams are playing. The game was announced in Australia. It's Rams and now I can't remember who they're playing. But the thought had been that Seattle was going to play in Australia this year, and it turns out that's not going to be the case. So Shane's probably a little bummed. But thanks for the super chat.
Interesting. So Henry commented, do you think we'll sign any flashy players this free agency? Keith, what do you think?
No. The Seahawks don't. The Seahawks aren't gonna. I don't see them signing anyone flashy. They're gonna spend a lot of their energy keeping this team together, and just reloading for another run. They might, add a wide receiver. But I think more rather than trying to, we need to upgrade there, I think getting Rashid re-signed is the priority, right? And so it's that kind of stuff. It's the cap room is going to be spent keeping the Super Bowl team together so they can make another run at another Super Bowl. And I just don't see the need, right? What's the flashy guy that this team absolutely needs?
I think the best example of that is up until a couple of weeks ago. I've even noticed this from the fan base. Everybody wanted Tyler Linderbaum to hit the market, right? The Ravens turned down his 5th-year option. He's an elite center in the same way that all the fans wanted us to sign Drew Dahlman last year. But I think that's quieted down. I think the fan base recognizes how good Sundell is and how cheap he is. I think you're right. You kind of stole my sort of joke answer. I was going to say, yeah, they're going to sign some flashy free agents. They're going to sign this running back named Kenneth Walker. They're going to sign this receiver named Rashid Shaheed, right? They're going to sign, they might sign this safety named Kobe Bryant. Like I hear he's pretty good. I think they're going to get a lot of heavy lifting done this offseason without going free agency.
Do they sign Tariq Woolen?
I don't think so. And here's why. I think they will make him an offer before free agency hits. I think he'll reject that offer because he knows if he hits the open market, he's going to get paid. And he's going to get paid a number that the Seahawks aren't comfortable giving him. And so I think ultimately he moves on. But why I'm okay with that is, first of all, I have the more trust than ever that Schneider together with McDonald are going to make the right choices, go out and find other corners. Incidentally, as much as you hear this isn't a great draft class, it's a pretty good corner class. And there's some guys sort of even in the range of 31, 32 that would fit the Seahawks, even at the back end of the second round. So I'm not worried about them being able to replace him with maybe a more Mike McDonald-like corner, right? But I think they're going to use that cap space to re-sign everybody. And it also sounds like we're getting some indications now that rather than go the 5th-year option route and wait until next year to try to extend JSN and Spoon, they're going to try to get that done this year. And if you can get all of that done, then not only do you keep all that continuity and keep this thing rolling, but guess what? You also, for the first time in years, might cash in on a number of comp picks because Reek Woolen's going to get paid. Boye Mafe might get paid more than we think he's worth once he hits the open market because teams will pay for upside and traits, and he's so young. The Seahawks may end up getting like a couple of 3rd rounders out of this deal too. So that's a win-win.
So another question or a statement, Fro H1 Fro H777 said, I think D-Law is going to play like he's on fire. Let's face it, most of our team could be MVP. Beyond the guys that we mentioned, are there any other guys that come to mind?
It's not a very good free agent class overall when you look at it. If
I'm talking like MVPs for this game. Yeah.
Oh, you're talking MVPs. Okay. I thought we were still on that. We can name them all. And I think to Fro's point, and shout out to him he hopped over from my channel onto yours so he could get his comments in. I think it speaks to just how good the Seahawks roster is that we could sit here for the next 10 minutes and name everybody. Julian Love could win MVP, right?
Couple interceptions. Yeah.
Kobe Bryant could win it. Leonard Williams certainly could win it. I don't know if Byron Murphy has a chance because he just kind of does the dirty work. Maybe he gets 2 sacks. But yeah, Ernest Jones could win it. Sometimes he's anybody.
If a linebacker in 2013, Smith could win it. It literally could be anybody.
Well, and
if Malcolm Smith is the analogy, then maybe Drake Thomas is your MVP, right?
Yeah. Well, and Shaheed is a guy that to me to come to mind because, you look at what he can do. He could take a punt return back for a touchdown. He could have a kickoff return for a touchdown. Yeah. He could have a couple of big, like 40+ yard pass receptions and maybe an end around that goes for, 26 yards. And you put all of those things together and you have, wow, this guy had a lot of all-purpose yards and he could win it. Yeah, there's just a lot of different names you could go through.
It'd be a really good time for Rashid Shaheed's first touchdown reception as a Seahawk.
That would be fun.
But to your point, if he gets, let's say he catches a touchdown, he has, maybe 6 catches for 90 yards. And then even if he doesn't score a touchdown on a punt or kick return, but he has like 120 yards in total returns, right? He's just given us good field position throughout the game. That's a good sneaky pick.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, do you have any other questions from your channel?
Oh, let's see what I got over here. First of all, guys, thanks for bearing with me. I'm still kind of dealing with some of this YouTube hack stuff where I'm not connected, but it should be resolved shortly.
Yeah, that's a crazy nightmare.
Yeah, thank God I survived it. Mostly just a lot of just really cool positive comments. Mostly just people saying they agree with everything we say. That was kidding.
Well, that's great. So let's wind this up. Dan, why don't you just remind people about your channel and some of the other things that you're involved with so that then everyone can find you.
Yeah. Seahawks Forever on YouTube and everywhere you get your audio podcasts. You can find me on Patreon. It's called Northwest Forever over there because I also include my Mariner content. And that's where you can get everything: video, audio, Substack, Discord, the whole deal. I'm going to go live at some point tomorrow, probably just for an hour, just to kind of check in one last time and just sort of take everyone's temperature, do a little anxiety check, hang out together and talk amongst ourselves and get ready for the game. And then it's time to shut it down. We've got some nice plans tomorrow night to go out and kind of not think about football and get a good night's sleep and wake up. And remember, I'm in the East Coast time zone now, so I got to wait till like 6:45 at night for this damn thing to kick off. That's going to be torture. But I will, win or lose, be going live after the game, obviously, to react to it. And hopefully it's a very emotional show, and the good kind of emotional show.
Yeah. How about you, Keith? You got any final comments?
I mean, no. I'm my preparation right now is making sure that I have the spread set out correctly. Right, we got all the stuff and
You smoking some meats, Keith?
Yeah, I'm smoking some meats. I got a brisket going and yeah, I mean that's what I'm talking about. Like that's the fun part of this for me, is that it's kind of an excuse to turn everything else off and just put together, that kind of stuff, and just enjoy family and friends and get together and celebrate this game that we love to watch and talk about.
I'll tell you one thing just to throw it in there is it dawned on me yesterday. This will be the first Super Bowl, not ever, the first Super Bowl 40. I watched at like a work party at my boss's house. Like, he closed the restaurant for the day and we all went over there, whatever. But the last two Super Bowls, 48 and 49, I was actually in a work capacity. I was able to watch the game, but I had to, I couldn't be fully invested in it.
That's very distracting.
Sunday, it's just my lady and I just enjoying the game. We're going to do kind of a Mexican spread, a little 7-layer dip, some street corn. Bill, what are you cooking up there at the Olfstead house?
Yeah. So doing some barbecue. Yes. Today earlier, I went out and bought some 3 different types of sausages from Schreiner's Sausage, which is a famous place here on 7th Street towards downtown. Nice. And we're doing some meatballs and some other things, having some family. My significant other said, we're not going to do a party. I know that you really want to focus on the game. And I said, yeah, that's probably a good thing. And she's gone out and invited like 7 or 8 other people in addition to family. So we're going to have a gathering of about 13, 14 people. But I'm still planning on sitting in front of that TV and making sure that I'm focused on the game, because I can't help that. I can't be too social on these sorts of big games. I'm a little bit too nervous, although I'll never show it on the outside, but on the inside, I'm sweating bullets and I'm like, what's going to happen next, all that good stuff. So, but
you're always cool
lucky us, right? We get to be surrounded by family. We get to watch the game. I'm lucky here in Arizona, in Phoenix. I'm going to have a TV outside playing the game, and it's gonna be like 80 degrees at kickoff. On the inside, I'll have the game going. We'll have food. It's perfect. I'm privileged. I'm just very fortunate.
Yeah, we got snow here.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
But
thanks for joining us, Dan. Appreciate you.
It's always good to be with you guys. Sorry it's been so long. We'll have to catch up again soon. I'll get you back on my show and hopefully talk about our second Lombardi.
Okay. Yeah, no doubt. And Keith, thank you. And really thank everyone for tuning in and watching the show. If you really like it, leave a message, leave a like, subscribe channel. That would be great. Share it with your friends and family, all that good stuff. Find us on social media. Love to engage and comment and all that good stuff. So let's go get this game, man. Super Bowl 60, Seahawks in a big way. Let's go get this thing. All right. We'll talk to you guys later. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.